A man scores a goal. 10 days later, he's dead. But here's the thing. The goal wasn't even why they killed him. Think about that for a second. Out of everything that happened, the own goal, the elimination, the humiliation in front of the whole world, that's not what got him killed. This is the story of Andrés Escobar.
Andrés Escobar fue cobardemente asesinado en Medellín. Colombia se llena de vergüenza.
A man who walked into the most dangerous World Cup in history before he ever touched the ball. A story about drug cartels, death threats sent through hotel televisions, and a murder so calculated, so deliberate, that the shooter counted his bullets out loud. 6 shots.
Bang! Bang! No! Please! Bang!
6 times. One for every time the commentator screamed, "Goal!" when that ball hit the net. By the end of this video, you'll understand why his own coach said soccer didn't kill Andrés, society did, and why the man suspected of ordering that murder was found shot dead in a restaurant in Mexico just months before the 2026 World Cup. This story never ended. Colombia arrived at the 1994 World Cup as one of the favorites. Pelé had tipped them to win the whole thing. They'd hammered Argentina 5-0 in Buenos Aires during qualifying. 5-0 in Argentina. The world expected something special, but what the world didn't know, what nobody was talking about, was that Colombian football had been built almost entirely on drug money. Pablo Escobar, no relation to Andrés, poured cartel cash into Atlético Nacional. The Cali cartel backed América de Cali. Another drug lord sponsored Millonarios. Better facilities, better players, better everything, all paid for in blood money. And here's the part that genuinely got me. More than half of that 1994 World Cup squad, 6 players from Nacional, 5 from América de Cali, had their entire football careers built on narco funding. The cartels hadn't just watched these players develop, they'd paid for it. And in cartel logic, ownership comes with expectations. Now, before a single ball was even kicked at this tournament, their starting goalkeeper was already in prison. Not injured, not suspended, in prison. René Higuita, the eccentric genius who invented the scorpion kick, the man who was supposed to be Colombia's last line of defense, had been caught delivering ransom money in a kidnapping deal connected to Pablo Escobar himself. Paid over $60,000 for it, jailed. Colombia walked into their most important tournament in history without their first-choice goalkeeper, and nobody talked about it publicly. Because in Colombia in 1994, you didn't talk about your cartel connections if you wanted to stay alive. Leading this squad was Andrés Escobar, 27 years old, club captain, known across Colombia as El Caballero del Fútbol, the gentleman of football. A man who once told a journalist, "In football, unlike bullfighting, there is no death. In football, no one dies, no one gets killed." He believed that. He was wrong. Colombia opened the tournament with a 3-1 loss to Romania. Shocking, embarrassing. And back in Medellín, in Bogotá, in Cali, the people who had bet enormous money on Colombia winning that match were furious. Not annoyed, furious. In the way that only people with guns and no accountability can be furious. That same night, defender Chonto Herrera, whose infant son had been kidnapped months earlier, only returned safely after Pablo Escobar's death, got word from home. His brother had been killed in a suspicious car crash. And then the hotel televisions turned on. I want you to really picture this. Someone with access to the Colombian team's hotel systems had programmed every TV in their rooms to display death threats. Not a fax, not a note slipped under a door. The screens themselves, the things the players turned on to relax, to call up a menu, to watch the news. Instead, you will die. And on the morning of the must-win match against the United States, Coach Francisco Maturana, his assistant, and a player named Barabás Gómez all received faxes at the hotel. The message: if Gómez plays, every single person in the squad will be murdered. Maturana pulled him from the lineup. Within 24 hours of the match, Gomez announced his immediate retirement from international football. He was 27 years old. He never played for Colombia again. Maturana said, "Barabas was a key player, but they had me beaten. I couldn't put another's life in danger." So when Colombia walked out at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena on June 22, 1994, this is what they were carrying: a goalkeeper in prison, a murdered teammate's brother, death threats on their televisions, a key player pulled from the squad by cartel facts. They weren't just outplayed. They walked onto that pitch already broken. 34th minute. American midfielder John Harkes drove a cross into the Colombia box. Andrés Escobar stretched out his right leg to intercept it. The ball deflected off his boot, rolled past his own goalkeeper. Own goal. And the commentator screamed, "Goal!" 6 times into his microphone while Andrés lay on the turf. 6 times. Remember that number. Colombia lost 2-1. They beat Switzerland in their final group game, but it wasn't enough. Eliminated, last in their group, going home. And here's the thing about Andrés that you have to understand. He was offered every reason to stay in the United States. His brother's family was in Miami. A TV station wanted him as an analyst. He could have waited, let the anger cool down, let time pass. He refused. "I want to go to Colombia," he told his sister. "I want to show my face." Before flying home, he wrote a column in the newspaper El Tiempo. He accepted responsibility. He asked his country for calm, and he ended it with these words: "See you soon, because life doesn't end here." He had no idea. July 1st, 10 days after the goal, Andrés went out with friends in Medellin's El Poblado district. He called his teammate Chonto Herrera to join them. Herrera said no. "Stay in. This isn't the right time." Andrés went anyway. Inside the El Indio nightclub, 2 brothers, Santiago and Pedro Gallón, known cartel figures who had lost heavily betting on Colombia, spotted him, and they started taunting him, shouting, "Own goal!" across the club, again and again and again. Andrés asked them to stop, calmly, the way he did everything. They didn't stop. At 3 a.m., Andrés walked back to his car alone, the parking lot. The Gallón brothers and their driver, a man named Humberto Muñoz Castro, were waiting. Santiago Gallón looked at Andrés and said, "You don't know who you're messing with." Then Muñoz raised his weapon, and this is the part that I genuinely could not get out of my head when I first found out about it. As he fired each shot, Muñoz shouted out loud, "Goal!" 6 shots, 6 times. One for every time that commentator had screamed the word 10 days earlier. The shooter had watched the broadcast. He had counted. He had planned it. Andrés Escobar died in hospital that morning. He was 27 years old. 27. 120,000 people attended his funeral. 120,000. Muñoz Castro, the man who pulled the trigger, was sentenced to 43 years in prison. He served 11 years for the premeditated murder of a 27-year-old man, released for good behavior in 2005. And the Gallón brothers, the men who were there, the men who ordered the taunting, the men in that parking lot, 15 months house arrest for concealing a crime. In a 2010 ESPN documentary, a former cartel hitman alleged that around $3 million was paid to redirect the entire investigation, to keep the focus on the driver and away from the men giving orders. $3 million to make sure the people at the top walked free. Maturana, the coach, said it best. "Our society believed that soccer killed Andrés, but Andrés was a soccer player killed by society." For 32 years, Santiago Gallón Henao largely escaped serious consequence. He was eventually convicted in 2010, not for murder, for financing paramilitary groups. Then he disappeared, kept moving, stayed in the shadows until February 5th, 2026. 4 months before the start of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, on the same soil where Andrés scored that goal, Santiago Gallón Henao was shot dead in a restaurant in Mexico. Colombian President Gustavo Petro confirmed it on social media. He wrote that Gallón had been responsible for Escobar's murder, that it had destroyed the country's international image. 32 years later, no courtroom, no justice, just another cartel killing in another country. After Andrés died, narco football collapsed almost overnight. The connection between drug money and football was now front-page news across the world. The cartels had to pull back. The money stopped. Without it, 12 of Colombia's 14 top clubs fell to the verge of bankruptcy. The country didn't qualify for another World Cup for years. The cartels built Colombian football from the ground up. Their own violence burned it down. Andrés Escobar scored one own goal in his entire career. He flew home when he could have stayed safe. He went out to show his face when everyone told him to hide. He wrote that life doesn't end here the day before it did. They thought killing him closed the story. 120,000 people at his funeral said otherwise. The 2026 World Cup is being played on the same ground where that cross came in, where that boot deflected that ball, where a commentator screamed 6 times and set everything in motion. The beautiful game has a long memory, and so does Colombia. Life doesn't end here. Andrés Escobar, July 1994.